Rebecca, thank you for joining me. Tell me about the Comeback Project.
So the Comeback Project is a conversation series that my dear friend Sammy Canold, who is an incredible director, and we came up with a few months ago. We were feeling like we weren't really getting a lot of information about how theater makers were going forward in the age of COVID. And both of us were very much the type of people that were reading everything on the internet that we could possibly find about, how productions were moving forward, how people were doing theater overseas, how people were approaching outdoor theater, filming, Zoom productions. But we found like there was no centralized place for all of that information. So we decided we wanted to create this series to kind of have a landing place for theater makers from all over the world, all over the country, to be able to exchange information and kind of provide that service for other theater makers like us that were hungry for this information but didn't quite know where to find it.
On the Comeback Project, you recently had a panel last Thursday, and a lot of productions are moving outdoors, as you had touched on. What are you hearing from them? What have they been seeing? What's working? What's not working?
Yeah, so we had Jerry McIntyre, an incredible choreographer who was the first equity-approved production to happen last summer. It was Godspell in the Berkshires by Berkshire Theater Group. And we were able to learn so much from Jerry and his experience. They had to perform, this was very early on in the pandemic, pre-vaccines, so everything was behind a plexi. He had to stay, I think he was saying that it was 25 feet from the actors to the audience. All of the staging had to be where the actors never faced each other because of, particles going in the air. So it was very fascinating to hear his experience because he had to follow all of the protocols and how he just had to learn how to go with the flow. And I think that's been the big lesson for all of us in this past year, especially as theater makers. Everything is changing on a minute-to-minute basis. And so I think the ability to adapt as theater makers has been like the biggest takeaway. And then I learned so much in the last panel because we have also veterans that have done outdoor theater like Shakespeare in the Park. And then also we had Mike Isaacson from the Muni, and they have an 11,000 seat amphitheater that is, they do productions every single summer. And so how to manage weather, how to manage, hearing people in the space and that interaction of not having a contained, like you walk into the theater and you kind of can contain certain elements. When you're outdoors, you can't contain any of that. So that was really fascinating to hear about, and to hear about how, some folks that are going to be taking their productions outdoors this summer will have to adapt to being at the whim of the elements, which is, I think, probably the biggest thing.
You did mention something about the sound, though. So one thing I did learn from that panel was that I didn't realize that lavalier mics put into the cast hair. Like, how does that work, though? That's something I never thought about.
Yeah. So what typically happens is they have a mic pack like somewhere on their body. It could be like, usually it's about mid-torso, or it could be on your back, however you're more comfortable as an actor. And then they run the cord usually through the back of the neck and then put the tape on your neck because that's the place where you can hide it the most. And then run the mic through your hairline to kind of cover it. So if you look closely at like some Broadway videos, you can see the tiny little bit of the lav peeking out right here at the hairline. That's the best. I'm not a sound engineer, so I wouldn't quote me on this, but like that's one of the best places to get sound. And also you can hide it the most. So the two places would be like either right here on the hairline, like right at the top of the forehead.
Behind the scenes tricks of the trade there. I'll be looking out for that because I never noticed that before. I didn't know that was, I was wondering how they mic themselves.
Yeah.
So speaking of the cast, so let me ask this question. In the age now, we're in the pandemic, we're getting a grip on this COVID-19. How does this rehearsal?
Yeah, I think that what I've noticed from some other processes so far have been that I think a lot of rehearsals are starting online and then moving to in-person later so that you minimize the the potential, I think, for, an outbreak. And I think also COVID testing, as it is for all workplaces, is now just like it's just part of it. Like, in order to be on set or be, in the theater, you have to get tested before and afterwards. I know that I've been working on a couple of like showcases at a college that I'm teaching at right now, and the protocol has been the actor is masked until we film them, because there's no audience, so we have to film the showcase. And then they can be unmasked for 15 minutes, and then we had to vent 45 minutes in between each singer. And I know that there's different protocols in different places, and I think that's the other big question, is that everyone has like a different protocol depending on the organization that you are a part of or the union that you're a part of. So I know that that's going to be a giant thing to figure out. And also, like, staging, can you touch, can you not touch, I think is going to be another big thing to figure out. Hopefully not so much after vaccines, but we'll see.
Now going into the fall is when New York City had planned on opening Broadway. Are you optimistic that Broadway could return to the way it was in 2019 this fall?
I am optimistic that Broadway can come back and provide the audiences the experiences that hopefully that we had prior. I think the big shift that is also happening in our industry is this enormous racial reckoning, and a reckoning of abusive workplaces that is also happening simultaneously and hand in hand, thanks to all the movements that have been happening since the summer. And so while I hope that it comes back as strong as before, I do hope that it comes back with like more equity, more workplaces that do not cause harm and that do not cause trauma for actors and for the people, all behind the scenes. I don't think it's limited to just actors. I think that all folks in the theater have been exposed to some kind of trauma. And so I'm hoping that it's both things, that we can come back stronger than ever and also with a better workplace.
I also want to throw in another question here, because you're a director, producer, actress, and everything. So I want to throw another question on what advice you would give for upcoming women looking to get into directing. Like, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say the number one advice is to look for opportunities. Like, I think for me, a pivotal moment was I was given the opportunity through the SEC observership program to get my first, opportunity as a young director to be in the room. And that led to several other jobs after that. To observe processes and then later assist that same director. I started with Desperate Measures at the York Theater with the director, Bill Castellino, who I adore to death. And then that set me off on a journey of being able to assist other directors. And so reaching out to directors that you admire is a lot easier than you think. So if you're interested in getting advice, I would always say reach out to somebody that you admire. And then also look for other female directors. I think it's important to have mentorship from fellow female directors. There is a difference in the way that the industry typically approaches a male versus a female director. And so I think that having female mentors has definitely helped me feel more confident in the room. So that's kind of the advice I would give.